Sometimes cheating is advised by friends, etc. Talking to a stranger is much more normal in Brazil. It happens every day.
When I came to Brazil and I did that, the girl was just looking at me like, okay, yeah.
If you're in a nightclub, you could just observe when a guy is walking up to a girl, how long it takes for him to start kissing her. That will go very fast. And the same will kind of be expected of you if you're on a date.
I've been on dates and they'll just say, yeah, you know, my boyfriend's at home and I'm getting a bit bored of the relationship. I'm like, what? Yeah, my boyfriend's at home, so I probably got to be back before 12. So, you know, let's make it quick, more or less. What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. I'm here today with the Swedish Gringo, and the Swedish Gringo and I are going to be doing a carnival coaching event together. But for those of you that haven't met Swedish Gringo before, aren't affiliated, haven't seen the channel, dude, explain a little bit about yourself to the guys.
Well, I'm a guy who just had a normal travel channel for a while, and then the goddamn pandemic struck, and I was stuck in Sweden. People think Sweden was a good place during the pandemic. It wasn't. So I was there with my friend, nothing to do. Everything was closed. And we just looked at a world map. We saw just a few countries that were still open. And one of them were Brazil. We went there and I just fell instantly in love with this place. And I've been here more or less ever since. So the last 2.5 years, I've been covering what to do in Brazil, where to go, the best sites, where to have fun. Basically everything Brazil, and especially Rio. That's the Swedish Gringo.
That's the Swedish Gringo. And from my end, I got recommended by like 8 different people over the course of the past 5 years to just reach out to you. And the final straw was this year. I just got one random email like, man, you need to reach out to Swedish Gringo. And so I finally caved in and found you in Fortaleza. And so, yeah, so I'm really excited to do this thing for Carnival. Like it's going to be an absolute blast. But you mentioned that you came to Rio and then you just stayed, right? What was it? I'm pretty well aware of why you would have wanted to visit Brazil, but what kept you here? Why didn't you just leave and go somewhere else?
Yeah, and this story was so much easier to tell people like 1.5 years back, when people still remembered how shitty life was during the pandemic. Because the brain has a tendency to block out the bad memories, right?
Yeah.
So let me just remind you, life sucked during the pandemic. You couldn't go to a restaurant. You couldn't go to a bar. You didn't have anything. And me and my friend, we just arrived in a place where the sun was shining every day. It was 25 degrees. Girls were walking on the beach with tiny bikinis. Everyone just wanted to talk to you. Everything was normal, and on top of that, extra happy, because Brazilians tend to be more energy. And that was like where the crush came, because not only did we escape the pandemic, we also came to a place where it felt like, shit, we really want to be here, and these guys want to have us here. And that's kind of the reason why my love might be a little deeper than for many others, because I was in a very fragile state when I first came to Brazil, and I kind of feel like I still owe Brazil a little. Brazil, you saved my life in a way.
And what were the main things that you loved about Brazil? Obviously, there's beautiful women, there's a very sociable culture, there's beach and sunshine, but what were the real things that you loved the most about the city? Rio de Janeiro, let's say.
Well, first I'm going to say the thing I didn't like as much as I thought, and that was the music. I was expecting, this carnival kind of music, people dancing everywhere. Brazil in general is much more normal than people think. So it's just like going to, I don't know, Spain and a European destination, and then you just kind of rev it up a little, like extra everything. So it reminded me of many of the Latin destinations I've been, or even, Southern European destinations, but people were just much more open. So that's the thing that really got me. People were simply not using their phones as much. They were looking each other in the eyes. And that was just the feeling of being seen, I guess, was really the thing that caught me.
Yeah. I guess you kind of do stand out. You and I both do stand out a little bit on First Arrival, right?
Yes, blue eyes
And
help just a little. Yeah, they do.
yes, yeah. And in a lot of your videos, you're actually, going up and having conversations with lovely ladies on the beach and asking questions that people want to know the answers to. And one thing that really comes through in your videos is that they're very engaging. But one thing that really comes through is that you're able to, or from the outside perspective as a viewer watching, you're very much able to like create that fun energy and that fun vibe and, make people laugh and make them have a good time. I mean, I know you don't like receiving compliments or gassing yourself, as we say in the UK, but what do you think there is about that? Like, how do you kind of bring the best out of people and get them talking and open up the people that you interview and the women that you talk to in Brazil?
I wouldn't say it's so much me. Sometimes I'm getting surprised myself by the reaction you get. You need so little to get a positive response here. So I would say, rather than anything else, I'm kind of just mirroring the energy they already have. So I wouldn't make people laugh this way in Sweden, for instance. There's definitely, a factor that we are in Brazil. I'm not a magician. Like, I'm just a regularly normal social person. But that gets you much further here in Brazil than anywhere else. So I guess one of the things is that I don't care as much when I start a conversation. I never, know all the words in the sentences I'm throwing away. Sometimes I don't even know where the conversation will go, but it doesn't matter. In Brazil, people they like the conversation for the conversation's sake. So there's really nothing to lose ever just initiating a conversation with anyone. It doesn't have to be a girl. It could be anyone you find interesting, because you will always get some information or some fun out of it.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I tend to think of Brazil, it's sort of like it's like a fire. If you light a candle with a match, you don't reduce the fire that was lit on the match and it goes to the candle. It just multiplies, right? And I kind of think of Brazil kind of like that with the energy, right? Yes. If you're feeling a little low, but you have this little conversation, it brings you some energy, then you share that energy with someone else who has a great energy and they give more back to you. And it's like everyone becomes energized here, right? It's like a virtuous cycle of social skills and social confidence, because every conversation you get into, the other person is giving you energy, and that gives you more energy to give to the next person. And that's why I think there's such a hot, sort of warm social culture here where everyone's talking. It's because there's already social momentum. Everyone's had 5 conversations by midday,
It's not just spreading, it's also increasing, because all Brazilians have a thirst for fun. So when you're getting the good vibe, it just keeps increasing, because everyone wants to be in that sweet spot where you just feel good and laugh. So it takes very little to get very far in terms of having fun.
So in your experience of Rio de Janeiro, where have you found that you've actually had the most conversations? I think the beach is an obvious one, so we can go into that, but then maybe some of the other places that you've actually seen attractive women and had conversations and sort of had a social life.
Yeah, it's always a matter of where you spend the most time, right? So, I mean, obviously, I just got to mention the beach, because I probably get, well, at least a majority of the friends I've met in Brazil, I met through the beach. And one thing you can't really do in the extent in Brazil, as you might have done in other countries, is that, especially in Rio, on the streets, people are, they got other things on their mind. Traffic is extreme, and there's also an element of insecurity. So as you can still approach strangers and talk to them on the beach, but it will not be the most comfortable situation. So very little encounters just walking on the street. But the boardwalks of Copacabana and Ipanema are perfect to talk to people. I've met a lot of people there. When you're sitting down watching the sunsets, one of the most famous spots is it's a mountain on the Ipanema side. It's called Apador, when you're sitting there, people are sharing drinks. Excellent place to talk. There's also, if I'm just going to be name dropping, a place called Moreta da Urca. Moreta means wall, and it's basically a place just outside of Copacabana with a big wall along the ocean, and people sit on that wall and they drink beer. And that place is made for social interaction. So people basically come there just to talk to other people. And obviously, there's a bunch of different, travelers, hostels, bars. There's meetups every week if you want to talk to both other travelers and also Brazilians interested in learning English or just plainly interested in gringos. And then, of course, we have the malls. I haven't been, I don't like malls as a concept. I get dry eyes. I always get stressed. I'm not really, a guy who likes to consume things. But malls in Brazil, they are different from many other parts of the world. In malls, people come to have a good time. They come to eat at the restaurants. It's a pleasure palace. So it's also a good place to talk to strangers, going to the mall.
A pleasure palace. I love it. Yeah. I think one of the great things about Rio is that it's so diverse, right? You can I've met girls in Centro, right? Outside the Museum of Tomorrow, Museu da Manhã. I've met them like in a little boteco in one of the side streets, in Centro. I've met them on the beach in Leblon, in Copacabana. I've met them in the malls in Barra de Tijuca. It's the streets at night. It's such a diverse mixture of different arenas. You've got the more like the mall where people are dressed up. The girls are going to wear dresses. They're often going to be like with a friend or with their family, having some food, having some drinks. And then you've got the beach where it's bikinis and it's hot and warm and everyone's already talking. So there's just so many different environments that if you're not the most extroverted guy, you don't like being constantly in high energy environments, you can always find something that's a little more subdued and a little more sort of natural feeling, where the beach might be a bit overwhelming if you're there the whole time in the baking sunshine. And so I think that's one of the really great things about Rio is that it's so diverse. There's so many different environments.
Yeah, and you also don't get questioned as you might be in Europe, for instance. The girl won't ask you why you just started talking to her. She will just listen to what you have to say first and then try to find an answer. Because talking to a stranger is much more normal in Brazil. It happens every day. So you won't get, she won't be thinking that you're up to something bad, as girls tend to do somewhere else. It's just, yeah.
So funny you said that. I remember when I first came to Brazil and I did some cold approach. I'm so used to in Europe, and particularly in the UK, going up and the first thing I say is, "Excuse me, I just saw you walking past and I thought you looked great, or I thought you looked nice, or I liked your hair. And I just wanted to say hi," right? And then I stop because usually the girl will then say, "Oh, thank you." And there's some pause before she processes and responds because I need to excuse the behavior because it's not normal. And I remember when I came to Brazil and I did that, the girl was just looking at me like, "Okay, yeah." Right? I was like, "Oh,
go on, go on." Yeah. People say that to me all day here, so that's just
step one. I know why you came over, right? And so I was like, "Okay, well now this is a different situation altogether because I no longer need to excuse this behavior and tell her why I came over and talked to her, and I don't need to expect a sort of nervous or shy response from her. I just say what I've got to say and just begin a conversation, right? You just begin conversations and you start in the conversation. There's no need for a warm-up period or
no. Look at it. Any good book doesn't start, slowly, step by step. It usually starts in the middle of the action.
Yeah.
To hook the reader. So do the same. You don't even have to know what it is you're saying. You can say something random. And because you will probably not be speaking perfect Portuguese and she will probably not be speaking perfect English. So there will not be like a 100% understanding language-wise between you anyways. So you're much more allowed to, say random things or awkward things as well.
For sure. So what do you think, because obviously you've been here a long time, what do you think are some of the biggest culture shocks in terms of the cultural differences from places like Sweden or the UK or the States that men come and they have to kind of adapt to in Rio?
Yeah, I can tell you one culture shock. I'm not a man who is, easily shocked, because I have actually been traveling the world. I've been to 91 countries, I've been in various different situations, but one thing that keeps shocking me, and this is especially Rio, because Rio is, where people are the most intense. You could go to a place on a date with a girl and she will still be, approached by other guys asking if she's single and obviously wanting to do more things with her than that. I mean, I have even worse stories where it went downhill. And it's like, if you are with a girl on some of your very first dates and the guy comes hitting heavily on her, it's surreal. And also, you don't really know how to react in the best possible way. Because Brazilians, they don't like conflict. They don't like when you show aggression. So you will somehow have to handle the situation like in a sophisticated manner. But the situation is just so unsophisticated as it is. So actually, I was in a situation where I was out. It was a party on the street. I was there with a girl, first date. The guy comes and he asks if she's single, and she kind of says no. And I ask him, maybe it's best you go to someone else. And he's like, yeah, but are you together or not? And I say yes. And she looks at me and like, no, we're not together. We're just on our first date. And that's where, he's gaining momentum. And eventually I just walk laughing away from there, because the culture shock of Brazil is that they have another system of dating. It's called to be a ficante, a hookup. So when you first meet, you just hookups, and people collect these hookups. There's nothing special with being a hookup. So it's not until you eventually, evolve into a higher stage of the relationship that you have, first dibs, that you're exclusive. That is very different. And also,
so interesting. Go on.
Yeah. Another shock is how fast they leap into kissing. And this is obviously, after sunset usually. So it's not like people kiss each other on the day all the time. But if you're in a nightclub, you could just observe when a guy is walking up to a girl and how long it takes for him to start kissing her if he's not rejected initially. That will go very fast. And the same will kind of be expected of you if you're on a date. You have to show that you are interested in a way that would raise more than a few eyebrows in Europe or the United States.
There's so many thoughts that come to my mind. But the first one is that it's very interesting, and I'm not going to go on a tangent. I'm going to try and keep this together. But I know that with Brazilian politics, a lot of Brazilians think that their politics is so corrupt, and that the UK and the US and Sweden is perfect and everything is not corrupt at all and it's all pristine. And what I often say to them is that actually the difference between us and yours is we have more sophisticated ways of hiding our corruption, right? But I know that my country and probably your country, there's some deep levels of corruption there as well. It's just much harder to know. It's much less transparent. And I actually think the ficante culture is I know it's very common culture in Brazil, but I think it might be to some extent just a case that it's much more obvious and much more acceptable. Because I've heard about this culture all the time. I understand very well the ficante culture, but when I observe my own experience, I haven't noticed any difference tangibly in other countries to Brazil. It's like, I'll meet a girl, we'll go on a date, we'll get on, we'll maybe meet up a couple of times later, we'll sleep with each other, and if we like each other, it will go somewhere, and if we don't, it won't. So the Vikanchi culture is, in some ways, I think, just more obvious in Brazil. Just like
they wear it as a badge. There's no shame in being a Vikanchi.
Yeah.
I mean, in some cases, it's even a badge of honor to be. So you will actually be, in some social situations, introduced as a Vikanchi, which translated means introduced as a hookup. Yeah. So you will be, this is the guy I'm sleeping with, but still don't really have feelings enough to be faithful to.
So it's very much just more acceptable, I think, is the main thing, right? And it's the same, like, I'm sure guys in Sweden want to go up to Swedish girls in the day and in the malls and say hi. It's not culturally accepted. And the same here. Women want to be approached everywhere in the world. It's just here it's sort of culturally accepted. No one's lying about the fact that they want to meet interesting people.
Yeah, it's not just accepted, it's expected. So I have some stories about Brazilian girls coming to Sweden, for instance. It can be very good-looking women, and they will just sit and start hating Sweden. They go to a bar, no one is coming up to her, because in the Brazilian culture, guys are supposed to show their interest very, obvious for the girl, or the girl will feel neglected. So yes, it does help a lot that this culture exists here, but it doesn't really help once the relationship comes to the next level, where you're actually in a relationship, because these patterns, they're still there. And especially for guys, it's so hard, leaving the past life, leaving the patterns they've had, all the time before, and suddenly not talk to girls and just close down. So, I mean, that is it's not even me assuming, that is the reason why the infidelity rates here are so high, because it's so deeply rooted within the man to talk to a girl he finds attractive.
Yeah. So it's almost like it's very easy for someone to sit on their high horse and say, oh, I never cheated on my girlfriend. And it's kind of like, yeah, dude, you never had the opportunity to, there was never, like, it's not, you're not maybe being morally correct from a position of power. It's just from a lack of opportunity. And the simple fact
it's easy being faithful in Sweden. But what I'm also saying is that being faithful in Sweden, since I've been faithful my whole life, that is, how I'm coded. It's rooted in me. And if you're coming from the other side, where you've been taught, I mean, perhaps even by your dad at home, to just go after pretty girls, then you're just suddenly supposed to switch it off when you're in a relationship, and that cannot be easy. I feel for Brazilian guys that really struggle with this,
and Brazilian women, because it's not just on the guys' side, right? I mean, first-hand to third-hand experience shows that it's very, very much both ways, right? And there is absolutely no shame it involves. I've been on dates with girls before, and I didn't know much about them, and they'll just say, my boyfriend's at home, and I'm getting a bit bored of the relationship. I'm like, what? So my boyfriend's at home, but so I probably got to be back before 12. So let's make it quick, more or less. What? I'm not even trying to hide it to the person that they are, potentially going to cheat on with.
No, they have a tendency to be wanting to kind of overlap the relationships. So starting with the new fiancé before they leave their serious relationship. Sometimes cheating is advised by friends, etc., instead of actually, helping or recovering the relationship you're in. It's like, just cheat on him and everything will be easier. You'll get a way out of it. So it's used as a tool.
Yeah, let's stress at this point, this is absolutely not all Brazilians and not all women in Rio. This is it, like the difference between individuals is greater than the difference between cultures. But it is definitely more culturally noticeable that this happens. It would be interesting to see the real data on like how many people cheat in your country and my country. I imagine it will be much higher than we think. It's just so much more visible in Rio. People find out all the time here, and there's just a lot of drama surrounding such things. Okay, so I think we've covered some of the big culture shocks. Just a little addition on that is I had a not similar experience, but I had an experience I remember quite early on where I was talking to this beautiful Brazilian girl, like exactly my type, and I was so into her. And we were talking, and she was just looking at me a little bit curiously after a while. And I said, so have you ever been with a foreigner before? And she was like, no. She was like, no, because I never know what you guys are thinking. I was like, but you know what I'm thinking, right? And she's like, no, I have no idea. And I was like, obviously I'm very attracted to you. She was like, really?
Because your hands were all over her, so she couldn't read you.
Yeah, she was literally like, really? And just like lit up and stepped closer and just started being I just didn't realize that I needed to just make it obvious the fact that I was attracted. I thought that would just be assumed, right? But it's you're so right. It's so interesting that you're expected to communicate your emotions clearly here.
Yes, and they're also a much more physical people. The culture is much more physical. They simply touch each other in situations where you wouldn't be touching people in Europe or the States. So imagine if you're trying to be like the subtle romantic guy, and on top of that, you're sitting with distance to her. You're not being anywhere near with your hands or your body. She will see that as a sign of, yeah, you're just trying to be nice, but you're not interested. So that might be offensive.
Man. It's bizarre. And there's so many lessons that guys can take back from Brazil. I remember the first time I came here, I came Carnival 2018. And I remember it being really hard when I first came. So I was just surrounded by a level of beauty and voluptuousness and sexuality that I just never experienced before. I remember it was very hard, and I almost felt like at the end of it that I hadn't really made the most out of it. It took me like 5 days to just even not be shell-shocked at the difference in cultures. And then the final 3 or 4 days, I just didn't have time to meet all of the girls that I wanted to meet and to sort of enjoy the confidence that I was gaining from being here. But I remember going back to the UK, I had such a high level of confidence because it felt like so easy to be the charismatic in your own culture. You're like a small fish in a big pond in Rio. Everyone's confident, everyone's well built, everyone's cocky, sexy, whatever you want to call it. And so when I went back, I was like, oh, now I'm the big fish in the small pond. And it just felt like it was playing the game on easy mode after I'd been in Brazil, because I'd had such a push, into a new. Me
and my friend, we call that the Brazil boost.
Yeah,
and it will not last forever unless you maintain it. But it doesn't just go for, the dating game. It's in general, you're just in a better mood. You have more energy. You feel, as you said, the push to get things done. But if you don't maintain it, it will go away in a matter of weeks. But that is a real thing. Coming home from Brazil, from any of other countries, is just people will notice. It's like, who's this new guy? Where does your energy come from? Brazil is the answer.
100%. And you start speaking like them. You elongate your words. You use your hands more. It's just it's the generator of social confidence. So I'm really excited, man. You're going to be here. A Swedish Gringo is going to be here in a couple of days, and we're going to do a proper collabo on the beach. We're going to go out, do some interviews. He's going to give it a go at the approaching. So I'm super excited for you to come here. I imagine the guys will see this video. No pressure, man. I imagine the guys will see this video before they see that one. But But yeah, I mean, if anybody has listened to this and thought even a little bit like, I want to know more, book a call with me at the link in the description. As always, these calls are free. I'm happy to tell you more about Rio and the experience that you're likely to have, how to stay safe and everything else. And this event's going to be absolutely epic. We've got 2 people coming already. So there's 4 to 5 depending spots left, but it's going to be absolutely epic. So guys, get in touch at the link in the description, get on the phone with me. And if you want to talk to the Swedish Gringo as well, of course, I will forward your contact on to him and you can jump on the phone with him as well. But for all of you guys watching, get in touch with me if you need to. And Swedish Gringo, thank you for the first of many collaborations on the channel and into the future. It was great to have you here, man, and appreciate your expertise.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Take care, guys.